Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Backtrack Cinema, and in this video we'll be doing a movie review of the John Hughes classic Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. So it's time to pop the popcorn, get a drink, get comfy, and let's talk some planes, trains, and automobiles, man.
I knew you.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was released in 1987, written and directed by John Hughes, and starring John Candy and Steve Martin. Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Jason. You're watching Backtrack Cinema, and this is where we talk movies from the past that you love and want to see. And I'd just like to wish happy Thanksgiving to all my American brothers and sisters in the South. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is something I watch every fall, like November, every Thanksgiving. It's my absolute favorite comedy, and John Candy's my favorite comedian of all time, man. Just love this guy so much. Just such a funny guy, and the chemistry with him and Steve Martin is absolutely fantastic. But before we get to the review, guys, let me know in the comments below what you think of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and we'll have a good time discussing it. So yeah, guys, this was a movie that I have adored ever since I was a kid. I watch it every year, sometimes twice a year. It goes on a lot. I just absolutely love the characters in this movie. I love the comedy. The comedy works so well. And you could not buy this kind of chemistry ever again between John Candy and Steve Martin. They just nailed the chemistry of these characters. They bounced off each other so well. And John Hughes, this was a guy who was notorious for writing scripts in days. I mean, this guy was so talented. He defined a generation. John Hughes has had that it factor. Fabulous writer and director. Whether we're talking 16 Candles, Weird Science, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Uncle Buck, this film that we're ready to talk about. He's just a fabulous director who always had a heartbeat going through the film. That's important. So when a Chicago businessman must struggle to travel home from New York to Chicago for Thanksgiving with a lovable oaf of a shower curtain ring salesman as his only companion. So yeah, guys, these two guys, John Candy and Steve Martin's chemistry is unbelievable in this film. We have two opposite style characters. We have a businessman, Steve Martin, very conservative, trying to get home, and he runs into John Candy, who's the opposite. He's a very social guy. He just flaps his gums all the time, talks too much, but has the biggest heart. He's supposed to be this really irritating, get under your skin kind of character, but you just love him so much. He's just so lovable in this movie.
You know, nothing grinds my gears worse than some chowderhead who doesn't know when to keep his big trap shut. If you catch me running off with the mouth, just give me a poke in the chops.
And then they just butt heads, these two, because of their different personalities. And this is why the film works so well. You just love watching what John Candy's gonna do, and then the reaction from Steve Martin. And that's what it is. Steve Martin's reactions is what's so funny, and how irritated he gets. And I would imagine they let them run with this. I would imagine John Hughes let them run and improvise with a lot of this stuff. And apparently they shot like over 3 hours of this film. Like, this film's original cut was over 3 hours long, if you can believe that. And then they cut it down to 2 hours. And I think the final cut was like 1 hour and 33 minutes or something like that. But just amazing comedy in this movie. And they have scenes that they're really funny just on their own. And then they have scenes together where they're just bouncing off each other. One of the more subtle things I like is the nuanced comedy in it. Like when they arrive at the hotel and they see that there's only one bed, there's this awkward silence with them. What about that cab ride? And then John Candy's just like, yeah, that's something. You know, you don't see cabs like that no more. It's subtle. It's so subtle, but it's so funny, the awkwardness of these two. I love how Steve Martin keeps trying to get away from this guy, but stuff happens in the movie and they end up being back together, and that's when it gets funnier and funnier and funnier, man. It's just hilarious. And I was saying before about how they both have their own scene. One of the big scenes with Steve Martin is the epic F-bomb scene when he goes back to the rental car thing and he lays out all these F-bombs against this girl who's working the desk. And it's hilarious, man, because, and this is what gave this movie an R rating. This movie was PG. This is family fun. And I think that's why it works, because we don't hear a lot of swearing. And then when we hear it, It's so impactful.
And I really don't care for the way your company left me in the middle of fucking nowhere with fucking keys to a fucking car that isn't fucking there.
It's hilarious the way Steve Martin does this, man. And by this time, he's just had enough, man. He has no nerves left. He's just ready to go off on anyone. So that is really, really funny. My favorite funny part of this whole film, when they rent the car, they're driving home. They're trying to drive to Chicago, and this is where they're bouncing off each other for a while, where John Candy's adjusting the seat and he's moving it all over the place. He's like, oh, I have a bad back. And they're just like a bitchy old married couple when they start talking, right? And then when John Candy switches seats, when he starts driving, Steve Martin falls asleep. And is this John Candy on his own, playing the piano to Ray Charles and stuff like that? It's funny stuff. Or when the car starts heating up because he accidentally throws a cigarette out the window and it goes into the back of the car and it starts getting warm and stuff. He's trying to take his parka off and he's trying to drive at the same time. It's just so physical and so funny, man. But before that, there's a great, great moment where Steve Martin is bitching and complaining because John Candy wants to take his socks off. I just love where John Candy's like, there's a lot of things about you that I don't complain about, He goes, well, what is it? What bothers you? And he goes, you play with your balls a lot. And you just hear Steve Martin go, I do not play with my balls. And then just the John Candy, the way he just runs the scene is amazing, man. It's so funny. I can't understate this enough, how great John Candy's acting is in this. A great performance, like some serious good acting in this. I think this is the movie where people just stood back and said, wow, this guy can act too. I mean, that scene where Steve Martin, had enough of him at the hotel and he's ripping into him. He's saying awful, he's saying mean things to him. He's breaking this guy's heart when this guy just wants, he's just trying to help a guy get home. He's trying to be a good friend.
I like me. My wife likes me. My customers like me. Because I'm the real article. What you see is what you get.
But John Candy's acting is absolutely incredible in this. And the pain you see on his face. I love how John Hughes shows the camera on his face when Steve Martin's delivering these lines, because it's what the actor's doing in between what they're saying. It's when you get to see their reactions, staying in character. That's the good stuff, man. That's the good stuff. And John Candy did a fabulous job in this. And like all John Hughes' work, there's this heartbeat that's following the whole thing along, that's moving the thing along, and it's absolutely fantastic. Where John Hughes leaves these breadcrumbs of Del Griffith's character. Then we eventually find out that, he doesn't even have a home. He's just been traveling for like 8 years because his wife died. And this is where the message of the movie is. This is why it's such a great Thanksgiving film, because it's the message of Thanksgiving. To be truly grateful and to appreciate what you have, because Steve Martin's a character who's been working a lot. He has not been connecting with his family. It's all about this lovable guy, John Candy, showing him that he should truly appreciate what he has. And that's such a great message in this film. I just absolutely love it. It's the true meaning of like Thanksgiving, man. To appreciate what you have. One guy has this loving family and one guy has lost everything. These two come together and they learn so much about each other. And Steve Martin does this great loving thing by inviting this guy into his home. And you got to elude that, John Candy's going to stay with his family for a while. You know what I mean? And what makes it more heart-wrenching is that John Candy's been dead for so long, and he's been dead now. That ending shot where he holds his hat and he curls his lips, it just, Niagara Falls, man. It will make you cry every single time, man. And the look on John Candy's face. Fantastic film, guys. Just an amazing film. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a comedy classic. It's your standard Thanksgiving film that you watch every year. The comedy works, the characters works, and it's beautifully written by John Hughes. All right, guys, I'm going to give Planes, Trains, and Automobiles an A. It's an all killer, no filler, man. All right, guys, so thank you for joining me on this review. Make sure you comment down below. We'll have a great discussion in those comments about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and I will see you on the next video. My name is Jason, and this is Backtrack Cinema, and I will see you in the movies, man. Take care. Cheers.